Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Amin, and I'm going to be telling you about an interesting place to go. I will be telling you a little bit about how to plan a road trip to the Mojave Desert. Now, how do we get there? I want to take you back. The year is 2005. I'm a junior in my college in Los Angeles. I'm staying at Hedrick Hall, the residential dormitories for the college students, on the 3rd floor, and it's Sunday night. A lot of the students, such as myself, go visit family and friends during the weekends and come back to school Sunday to get ready for a week of class. So me and a bunch of my friends, we were gathered around the commons area. I remember it like it was yesterday. The sun had just set, it was starting to get dark. Students were busy walking across the hall. The murmur of other students could be heard in the hallways. And we all went around and, asked how we spent our weekend. My friend on the right, Brother Ahmed, he said he just spent it with his family. He had lunch with them, spent it at his parents' house, and came back. My friend Muhammad, well, he went out with his brother and they went and played some arcade games at the local miniature golf place. Came back. I spent it watching TV and reading some books. Then my friend Khalid surprises everyone. And so when he tells us what he did, we couldn't believe it. He said, I got to see huge, ginormous sand dunes. I got to see beautiful scenery, mountains, tall. I got to see huge dinosaurs, and I walked through an old Wild West ghost town. What? We all looked at him in perplexity. You did all that in a weekend? No, he said. I did all that in one day. We were all bubbling with questions. How did you do this? Where did you go? So Khalid gathers us closer and we creep in and lean into Khalid, all eyes gazed at him. And he tells us that all of these places were just a couple hours drive away. And so he took his car on Saturday, early morning, and drove around Southern California. He drove around the Mojave Desert, seeing all of these things. And he was amazed to see all these things. We were amazed to hear this story because all of us had been local residents of California. We grew up here. We didn't know that there were all these interesting things there. When we heard of the desert, we thought it was nothing but a bunch of rocks, dirt, and cactuses. When we thought of the Mojave Desert, all we knew of it was a place to drive through when you're driving to Las Vegas. And if you were to ever pull over or stop there, the only reason was to fill up gas or use a restroom. But to actually explore the area, we couldn't believe it. So this, inshallah, will tell you his trip. So that yes, you can in fact take this and go on your own road trip and see those things. Now before you get started, it's important to know our intention, right? As Muslims, we get rewarded for our intention. Now what if I was to tell you that traveling could be a means of you to get closer to Allah? That traveling could be a means for you to increase your faith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in a verse about the creation. He mentions how amazing it is. He talks about a people who travel the lands and all around them they pass by the signs of Allah. Whether it is the trees, the animals, the stars in the sky. Yet these people passed by it without even acknowledging that these were from Allah, or not even considering the importance of these things. So as Muslims, all around us are the creations of Allah, the signs of Allah, that if we stop and reflect, if we stop and think about it, it could be a means of getting closer to Allah by thinking about the beauty that Allah has created for us. By thinking about how amazing the different creatures and nature that is there. And by humbling ourselves when we compare ourselves to these huge and beautiful creations that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. Now before you start anything, it's very important to plan. There's a famous quote that says, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. In other words, if you're going to be doing something, first and foremost you have to think about how you're going to be doing it. Now when it comes to a trip that's going to require several hours and many miles, yes, you do have to plan for that. And so there are several things that you could do to make sure that this trip goes smoothly. The first is to have an itinerary. That is going to let you know how much time you have on your trip. You can use Google Maps to find out how long it's going to take you. So when you leave, you know exactly where you're going to be 2 hours from now. You know where to stop for lunch. You know where you need to pray when the time for prayer comes. That is going to be important. Having a map is also going to be very important. That's going to let you know where you are. You're going to be probably traveling places where you never heard of these streets or these highways before. So that's going to be another important thing to have. And making sure that you have enough food with you is also important. Because your food is going to be keeping you satisfied throughout the trip. And also having enough money on you will help. Sometimes it doesn't help to have credit cards because you might be somewhere where they don't accept credit cards. So having some emergency cash on you is always going to come in handy. Another thing to consider is your own safety. Now, how are you going to do that? Well, there are several things. First and foremost, it's very important to keep in touch with a loved one, maybe it's your parents or a friend, and let them know exactly where you're going. Send them your itinerary. Let them know the places you're going to be planning to visit. So if, Allah forbid, something were to happen to you, they know exactly where they can find you. Second thing is to bring a very light first aid kit. So if you ever have some light scraps or something you need a bandage temporarily, you'll have that with you. It's also important to carry lots of water. So when you're in the desert and you're traveling for many hours, you never know what might happen. You might get a flat tire, get stuck somewhere. So you're going to want to have some water to keep you hydrated in those times. And it's also very good to have basic car kit. Some basic checks that you do with your car. Before you take your car on a long trip, it's very good to have it inspected, to have it looked over. It's also helpful to have your tires checked for the right air pressure, to make sure that your oils are there and that they're at the right levels. Now, once you're on your trip, you're going to want to head to the 10 freeway. Interstate 10 freeway, and you go east. You go east, you pass the Inland Empire. You pass all the cities until you get into the desert. And you're going to want to stop by the first place. It's called Cabazon. You'll spot it very easily. You'll see a lot of giant, huge windmills. And then you'll see 2 huge dinosaurs off the freeway. Now this place is a small town, and about 50 years ago, a man by the name of Claude Bell, who became famous later for designing the theme park called Knott's Berry Farm, he wanted to create a legacy for himself. So he decided to create 2 huge, larger than life-size dinosaurs. Yes, dinosaurs that stand up to 50 feet tall, that are over 100 tons in weight. These dinosaurs might be fun to watch, and you might want to take a selfie with it, but think about something deeper. Think about Allah and His creation. Think about the huge size these dinosaurs were, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had made them so ferocious that if you were to be in front of a Tyrannosaurus Rex, how insignificant you would be. He could crush you in one footstep. These guys could run over 20 to 30 miles per hour. And their jaws, they're so powerful that they can just crush animals alive. Really powerful things. Now also think about too, despite how majestic they were and how grand they were, that they became extinct all of a sudden. Wiped off the face of the earth, all that remains are some bones that are now in museums. Now we might think of ourselves as great and majestic human beings, but how quickly could it be that we would one day no longer be here? We know that eventually all the life will be extinct. Even the angels, that they too will die one day. So look at these dinosaurs and think about our mortality. Think about how one day we might become extinct. Whether you see it now or you see it later. And so that is Cabazon. So when you're done with Cabazon, you're going to want to go back on the freeway, on the 10 freeway. And you're going to want to take Highway 62 north to 29 Palms. And when you get there, you will be amazed at one of the most majestic and beautiful national parks in all of the United States. I'm talking about Joshua Tree National Park. It is one of the most picturesque parks that you'll ever see. There, you'll see huge rock formations, majestic mountains, all sorts of very unique plant life. The rocks that were formed there formed over hundreds of thousands of years ago. And they came and they created these huge boulders. Some people climb them actually. You'll also see at Joshua Tree a very unique cactus, which the park got its name from, the Joshua Tree. Now these plants are amazing. They're really spectacular. They have roots that can go up to 30 feet into the ground and pull from water sources even though there's very little water in the desert. These Joshua tree could live hundreds of years, even close to 1,000 years. Think about that. That Allah has created such a durable and such a rugged plant that could withstand drought, the heat of the desert sun, and still find water and live for hundreds of years. They produce a plant that the indigenous American were using to eat. There's also very fascinating wildlife at Joshua Tree National Park, including jackrabbits, all sorts of birds, and even some insects. Yes, people go bird watching at Joshua Tree. These birds, sometimes they'll use cactus to nest in. They'll find water in hidden streams to live off of. So that is Joshua Tree National Park. So what you'll do now is continue on Highway 62 all the way to Interstate 40, and there you will see even something greater. You'll take Interstate 40 and you'll exit Kell Baker Road. This lonely two-lane highway, this lonely two-lane road in the middle of the desert will lead you to a golden mountain of sand. I'm talking about the Kelso sand dunes. These sand dunes are amazing. Think about it. How huge they are. They're over 600 feet in height. These sand dunes were created thousands and thousands of years. Particles of dirt, minerals, were battered together by the sun and the wind and formed these huge dunes. And when you get a microscope and you look at the sand, you'll be amazed to see that they're made up of small little minerals, grains of minerals that combine and make this huge mountain. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a very insightful surah, has a very insightful verse in Surah Al-An'am talking about the majestic and the grandeur of His knowledge. He says, in referring to Himself, Allah, He knows what is in the land and in the sea. No grain is there within the darkness of the earth, moist or dry, and nothing moist or dry except it is in a clear record. Now if you were to take a scoop of that sand and look at it, You can spend all day, literally all day, counting each grain, thousands of grains, just in one scoop of sand. Now imagine all the sand that's on that sand dune, and the millions, if not billions, grains of sand that are a part of that. And despite how many there are, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already knows about it. And they are in a record. He knew where they came from, where they are now, and where they're going. And how quickly that human beings forget what we even had for lunch yesterday. We sometimes even forget our anniversaries, our birth dates. It's crazy. Now think about Allah's knowledge and how vast it is that He has knowledge of all the grains. Not just there, but in the entire world, in the entire universe. You can imagine how many sand dunes there are in the world, and all the sand combined, and yet He knows it. And it is not too much for Allah to know. So when you look at these sand dunes, think about that. Think about each grain and how Allah knows about it. Now after you're done looking at these sand dunes, you're going to go back down on Kelbaker Highway, on Kelbaker Road, onto Interstate 40, going west towards Barstow. And before you get to Barstow, you're going to stop by a town called Yermo. In Yermo, you're going to see a sign that says Calico Ghost Town. Calico Ghost Town was a mining town that existed in the 1800s, nestled beneath the Calico Mountains. Now these mountains are unique. You might look at them, and you might say there's nothing really spectacular with these mountains, just a bunch of rocks. But subhanAllah, glory to Allah, that in those rocks are some of the world's most precious minerals. Silver, borax. Let's take borax for example. Many of you may not have heard of it. It's a rock that forms naturally in the earth. If you were to look at it, it would look like a piece of black dirt. Giant, dirty rock. You might say, well, why is this so precious? What's so valuable about this? SubhanAllah, glory to Allah that people have taken this rock and made it into a profitable item. They've made it into soap. They've made it into household cleaning products. They've made it even into clothing detergents. So this rock in the 1800s was one of the first ways that people were cleaning their clothes with. They were using it for soap. It was revolutionary. So think about that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made in all of these items some spectacular uses out of them. And that we depend our lives from them. Yes, even an iPhone, as technology, as fancy as that may seem, but it is built out of components like glass, plastic, silicone chips. All of these are coming from the earth. They're all material that we've used by the permission of Allah to create such fantastic items. Now Calico Ghost Town itself is very unique. This place at one point was a bustling silver mining town. In its peak, over 1,500 people lived there. The economy was flourishing. People were mining the silver, hauling it in, and making loads of money. And all of a sudden, the price of silver started to tank. In fact, it went so low that it was no longer profitable to spend the time and effort to dig and mine the silver anymore. And literally, in a couple of years, the town collapsed. People had jobs, they lost them. They had livelihoods, they had family, they had children in schools in this town, and all of a sudden they had to go. And that makes us think too. We should reflect on this. We might live in a very nice house and we might think we'll always be in this house. But what if something were to happen? What if there was an earthquake or a natural disaster? We might have a very nice job. We've maybe been there for 10, 20 years. But all of a sudden you find out that you've been laid off. Now what? This Calico Ghost Town should make you reflect on just how weak we are as human beings. And how little control do we really have of a life. It should make you think not to take things for granted. If you have a nice house that you live in, if you have a really comfy job, you should say, Alhamdulillah, praise to Allah. And don't expect these things always to be there. It is out of Allah's mercy that He has given these things to us. And it could be like that, He takes them away. So let us reflect on these things and make this trip not just for amusement, but let's make this trip something that is going to make us remember Allah and get us closer to Him. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those who remember Him, who make us of those who do things that are beneficial, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept the actions that we do for His sake alone. Barakallahumma wa bihamdik, wa jazakallahu khairun, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.